Yes, welcome again to our lesson, dear learners or students. Before we jump into our lesson, we would like to thank Stabase Media who make these lessons possible. And we also like to urge you to always remember them whenever you have events, you need photography, videography, live streaming or drone services, feel free to contact them. Once that is done, welcome to our lesson for today. We are going to look at quadratic equation 2, which is a Form 3 topic. And under the contents, we are going to look at the introduction to quadratics. We are going to look at how we form quadratic equations. We are going to look at how we solve quadratic equation by factorization, by completing the square method, by quadratic method, by graphical method, and then we're also going to look at perfect squares. So that is the scope of our lesson. So welcome. So by introduction, what are quadratics? Quadratics are polynomial expressions of the second order. Polynomial expressions of the second order means that they are expressions that take the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Whenever you see any equation that is in the order of power 2, that qualifies to become a quadratic equation. And then quadratic equation take the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. And then basically this a is the coefficients of x squared, this b is the coefficients of x, and this c is the constant. Or rather, when you have a graph, it is where the line cuts the y-axis. That is the c we are talking about. So when you have a curve like this, this point where it cuts the y-axis, this is what we call the C. Okay? Yeah. So this point is where we call C. Graph can also be drawn like this. So we've agreed that here is called C, where it cuts the y-axis. Then where it cuts the x-axis, that will be the solution for the particular quadratic equation. So as we agreed that quadratic equations are polynomial expression of the second order, or rather of the second power. So they are normally expressed as ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. And always remember that a, b, and c, these are normally values, or rather they are the numbers that come before the unknown letters. Okay? So whether an equation is written in the form of, let us say, rm squared plus ym plus b, this still qualifies to be a quadratic equation. So quadratic equations normally come in many ways, but once you've understood the structure, then it becomes very easy then to move to the next point. And we're asking ourselves, how do we form this quadratic equation? Number one, you can form quadratic equation when given roots. For example, form a quadratic equation whose roots are -2 and 3. We can form a quadratic equation from this when we are given the roots. That is the first way you can form quadratic equation. And the question is here. Form a quadratic equation whose roots are -2 and 3. Basically, or graphically, this is what they mean. That can you find the equation of this curve where here is -2 and here is 3. The most important thing is to know that where the line cuts the x-axis, those are the roots. Those are the roots for the curve, or those are the roots for the equation. So for example, this one, we are going to say that x is either -2 or x is 3. So for us to form a quadratic equation, we are going to bring this the other side. So we're going to say x plus 2. Then the other one is x minus 3. Then this is very important for you to form the quadratic equation. How do you multiply? You need to watch how we multiply. So the first arrow will come from this to this. This is the first multiplication. Then the second will come from this to this, taking note of the sign. This is the second multiplication. Our third multiplication will come from this to this, and I've said you take very keen note of the sign. And our last multiplication will come to this. So following that order, we are going to start with the first arrow where we're multiplying x by x to get x squared. Then we multiply x by -3, we get -3x. Then we go to 2 times x, that is 2x. Then we go to 2 by -3, that is -6, to be equals to 0. And therefore, when we simplify, this will be x squared minus x minus 6 is equals to 0. So this is the quadratic equation. So the most important thing is that as you are multiplying, take keen note of the signs, because you have a scenario where when you multiply a positive by a negative, the answer is a negative. When you multiply a negative by a negative, the answer is a positive. So you need to take keen look of that. So just by doing that simple multiplication, we are able to come up with the quadratic formula. So quadratic equation. And you can see here the coefficients of x squared is 1, the coefficients of x is -1, and c is -6. Now, a second way in which you can form quadratic equation is where there are word problems involved. For example, you are told that the length of a room is 4 meters longer than its width. Then you are told to write an expression for the area of the room. So when you are solving this, you might end up forming a quadratic equation. So assuming this is our rectangular room, we know this is length and we know this is width. Then we are told that the length of a room is 4 meters longer than its width, meaning if we give the width x, then this will be x plus 4. Let us agree there. So if we let the width be x, because this length is longer, we are going to add. You don't multiply because you are not told it is 4 times larger than. You are just told it is 4 times longer. So you're going to let the width be wx, and then the length will now be x plus 4. Then an expression of the area, you know that area is length by width. That is how we give area. So when we are giving area for this, you're going to say it is x into x plus 4. And when you open the bracket, you end up with x squared plus 4x. And then sometimes, you know, you might be given the area itself, so you can proceed to solving. But our issue here was about formation of quadratic equation. So quadratic equation can be formed in many ways. Some you can even solve through cross multiplication. You can be given a question and then you realize that when you cross multiply, you end up with a quadratic. For example, when you're told x squared plus, is it plus 3 over x is equals to 4. When you cross multiply this, you will realize that you are ending up with a quadratic equation. You will have 4x to be equals to x squared plus 3. Look at what we are ending up with. We are ending up with x squared minus. So we are going to bring this the other side, is equals to 0. So quadratic equations, you can form quadratic equations from anywhere. Even from this, 2m minus the square root of m, okay, is equals to 6. This can also form quadratic equation because for you to remove this square root sign, you're going to square each factor. And then you will realize you're going to end up with a quadratic equation. So don't panic. Anything can lead you to quadratic equation. This is why we are saying this is a core topic in mathematics, and therefore that is why we gave it a priority to help us understand this before we start with how to solve them. Nearly 70% of the topics rely on concepts on quadratic equations. So thank you. Yes, so students, having done the introduction, we move to how to solve quadratic equations. So there are many ways of solving quadratic equations. And basically, what we mean by solving a quadratic equation is to get the roots. So anytime you're told to solve a quadratic equation, what the examiner wants you to do is to find the two roots that satisfy the quadratic what? Equation. So the first method through which we can solve or get the roots is called factorization method. Factorization method is also called splitting the middle term method. In this method, we factorize. To factorize means to put in factors. Okay? Factorize means to put in factors. So we are going to check how factorization works, and we are going to start from a very simple example. So we have an example here. We are told to solve for x in x squared minus x minus 6 is equals to 0. So when you want to get this, you have to get the product and sum. When you're getting product, you multiply a, which is the coefficients of x squared, by c, which is the y-intercept. That will help you get the product. That is why understanding this format of quadratic equation is important. So we are going to get that product will be the coefficients of this by the y-intercept. So that will be 1 times negative 6, which is negative 6. And then sum will be the coefficients of b. That gives you the sum. So the coefficients is -1. Then you ask yourself, what are the two numbers? And when you want to get the two numbers, the simplest way is to get the factors for the product. And if you don't know that, you simply do the LCM way. You say 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 3 goes there 1. So you know that the factors are 2 and 3. But you also ask yourself, how do I arrange them so that when I add them, I get -1, and when I multiply them, I get -6. So that is why you have the calculator. If you arrange them well, you're going to have -3 and 2. Because if I multiply this, I'll get -6. And if I add them, I'll get -1. And why we call this splitting the middle term method is because instead of writing -x, we are going to insert these two values. As in, we are splitting this middle term. That is what we are doing, so that we get factors. Remember, quadratics is about getting two roots. So these two factors will help us get the two roots. So we split the middle term and say here is now -3x and here is 2x. So when I bring this in, I'll now have x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6 is equals to 0. I have split the middle term into 2. Why? To help me get the factors. Then I factorize in pairs, because we know that quadratic equation have two roots, so you factor in 2 pairs. And then you ask yourself, in the first pair, what is the common factor? The common factor there is x, so we have x minus 3. Then you say plus, you go into the second one, you realize that 2 is the common factor, and you say x minus 3. Very good. Then you take this and this, so you'll have x plus 2, x minus 3, because these are common, so you pick one. So when you equate all of them to 0, you will get the answer as x is equals to -2, or you'll get x to be equals to 3. Simple. So that is how we use factorization method. I can also use it again in a second example where now the coefficient is greater than 1. For example, we have this here. Let me write it in red. 2x squared, then plus 3x minus 5 is equals to 0. When you want to solve that by factorization, as I said, you get the product. And in getting the product, you will multiply the coefficients of x squared, which is a, by the y-intercept, which is c. So what do you get here? You will get 2 by negative 5, which is negative 10. Then the sum is simply the coefficients of b, the coefficients of x, which is b. Coefficients means the number that comes before the value. When it doesn't have, it is presumed to be either positive 1 or negative 1. That is it. So our sum will be 3. So you ask yourself, which numbers, if I multiply, I get 10, negative 10. If I add, I get 3. So you just start asking yourself, 10 can be gotten by multiplying 10 times 1, or 5 times 2, or only those two methods. So you have 5 and 2. How do you arrange them so that when you multiply them, you get negative 10, and when you add, you get 3. So you're going to say your numbers are negative 5, negative 2. Because if I multiply, I'm going to get negative 10. If I add, I'm going to get 3. Then I split the middle term. Class, you split the middle term. You break it into 2. That is what we mean. So that here we'll be having 5x, and here we'll be having negative 2x. This is what you fix. You replace by this. So you're going to have 2x squared plus 5x, okay, minus 2x minus 5 is equals to 0. Then you put them in factors, 2 factors. Common x, that is into 2x plus 5 minus 1. The common factor here is 1 into 2x plus, don't confuse, because negative times a positive will give you this negative. These values in the bracket here must always be the same. You even saw here, the values in the bracket were the same. So if your values here are not the same, it means you are headed towards trouble. Okay, and that basically deals with how keen are you with the signs. So you're going to pick this and this, that is x minus 1, and then 2x plus 5. All of this you equate to 0. So by simplifying, this first one will be x minus 1 is equals to 0, and the second one will be 2x plus 5 is equals to 0. When you simplify, you will get x is 1, or x is, this is negative 5 over 2. So class, that is how we solve quadratic equations by factorization method. When you practice, you become perfect in even knowing how to get the factors very fast, the two numbers. So when you have a difficulty, always just draw this LCM, and you'll always get a hint on the factors that you need to use. We are moving on to the next, which is completing the square method. This is the simplest method so far, because when you are completing the square, you simply add b over 2 a squared to both sides of the equation. So this is actually the simplest method, because you simply just add half of it. Let us look at the first example we used. X squared minus x minus 6 is equals to 0. If I'm told to use completing the square, what do? I must know that a quadratic expression is written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So when I have this and I want to use completing square, I'll rewrite it here. And then you follow the steps with me. Number one, you take c the other side because this has a singular coefficients. There is no need of simplifying. So you just take c the other side. That is the first step you do. So we're going to have x squared minus x is equals to 6. And then now I complete the square in each side, meaning I add. B is the coefficients of x. So I add half of it and I square to both sides. So this is what will happen. It will be x squared. You take the sign minus 1 over 2. 1 was the coefficient. You divide by 2, then you square. That is simply what you do. Then on this other side, you also add this element here. That is a half squared. I think it is simple. You will help me with your calculator in multiplying. So the most common mistake students do is that they try and multiply this. No, this one you should just leave. You should just factorize it as x minus a half squared. This is how you factorize it. Some of you will multiply this and then you have x squared minus a quarter. No, wrong. When you're using completing the square method, at this stage, what you do is that you factorize them into 1. And then this side ndio sasa unafanya hiyo hesabu yako. What is it?
25 over 4.
You will get 25 over 4. Very simple. So I get square root on both sides. I don't know why people fail. And the math is this simple. So you'll get the square root on both sides. Then you're going to find x minus a half, that is the square of this will cancel this, will be equals to plus or minus. What is the square root of this? It is 5 over 2. Over 2. So x can either be, you take this the other side, a half, it will be a positive now, plus or minus 5 over 2. So x can either be a half plus 5 over 2 or x can be a half minus 5 over 2. So what do you get from your calculation? So x is either 3 or what is a half minus 5 over 2? Negative 2. I mean, students fear completing the square method, but it's the simplest and the most accurate. Remember, factorization does not apply in all cases. They only apply in simple cases and application question where you are sure you're going to get a definite number. But any other, I prefer you use completing the square method or use the quadratic formula. Yeah. So let us try a scenario where now the value of x is greater than 1. For example, let us get an example here. Yeah, 2x squared plus 9x plus 9 is equals to 0. How can we use completing the square method to solve this? First of all, by simplification, ensure that the coefficients of x squared is 1. That is the key principle here. Always ensure that the coefficients of x squared is 1. If it is not 1, what do? You simplify. You simplify by the coefficients of x squared, so that at all moments you're dealing with completing the square method, your value of x squared here, or the polynomial of order 2, must be 1. So for it to be 1, we're going to divide all through by 2. So we're going to have x squared plus 9 over 2. Please here, just use fractions. Don't start dialing your calculator. You will get ambiguous numbers. I prefer you use improper fraction, but don't include decimals in this topic. Now, After doing this, we'll take C the other side. We are going to take C the other side. So it is going to be negative 9 over 2. Beautiful. Then what do? I add B over 2 squared. Okay? B over 2 squared. So this is my B. Look at my B. It is this one. So this is what I'm going to do. Look at this class. This is where you people mess. You are going to add 9 over 2 times a half squared. Please don't do your own things. Just do it like this. Just write that, then you multiply by a half. You won't get confused. This is where most students, they ignore to use this method because of this stage. That is where if you mess, you mess. Negative 9 over 2 plus 9 over 2 times a half squared. And I said, for you not to mess in exams, hii usijaribu kuexpand, just factor them. You just say x squared plus, or rather x, this will be x plus, this is 9 over 4 squared. Don't struggle expanding this to be equals to, you will help me here. What is negative 9 over 2 plus 9 over 4 squared? 9 over 4 squared is 81 over 16. Get 9 over 16. This is the cheapest method you can ever use in exam, and you are sure you won't fail. So because we were getting square roots on both sides, we also get the square root of this. So x plus 9 over 4 will be equals to plus or minus, this is 3 over 4. So therefore your x can either be negative 9 over 4 plus 3 over 4, or your x can be a negative 9 over 4 minus 3 over 4. What do you get in those circumstances? Negative 3 over 2. And what do you get when you have negative 9 over 4 minus 3 over 4? Negative 3. The cheapest method is completing this question. The other method that you can use to solve quadratic equation, and it is called the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. And this is also the simplest method because you don't even have to cram it. It is in the log table. It states that for you to get x, it is the negative of b plus or minus square root of b over 2 over 4ac over 2a. This one you don't even need to cram. It is in the log table. The most important thing is to understand what is b, what is a, what is c, what is a. And I'm still repeating that a is the coefficients of x squared, the number that comes before it. B is the number that comes before x. And c is the y-intercept. Those are basically numbers. So your work in exams is simply to replace. For example, use quadratic formula to solve 3y squared. 3y squared minus 2y minus 5 is equals to 0. You are told to use quadratic formula to solve this. What do? You simply extract a. What is a? The coefficients of the polynomial order 2, 3. What is b? Negative 2. I've said coefficients is a number that becomes before unknown. And then c is negative 5. My dear friends, una replace tu. Hapa kuna kitu ngumu. So unasema x. For you to get x, it is going to be neg b. So if b is neg 2, so it is going to be a positive. So it is negative of b, which is neg 2. plus or minus square root. This discriminant. Hapa ndio watu wanaanguka. When they are using the calculator, they forget to put the brackets and therefore they mess up with the signs. So ensure you put the bracket. Negative b squared minus 4 into. Weka bracket a 3 times c negative 5. Usipoweka bracket, hapo ndio utapata wrong. Okay? So I always prefer malizana na hii ya juu kwanza. So hii itakuwa 2 plus or minus. Hii unaingiza kwa calculator vizuri without any errors. Because if you mess, you mess. There is no any other solution. It is to root what? 4. Students, I'm telling you, if you mess here, there is even no need of kuendelea na hii hesabu. Then, nimesema malizana tu na ya juu kwanza, so that you don't get confused. So itakuwa hii negative plus or minus 8, because we know the root of 64. Ndio unakuja unaweka over 2a. Over 2a. What is over 2a? 2 times a is 3, which is 6. So x can either be negative 2 plus 8 over 6, or x can be negative 2 minus 8 over 6. So this can be 1 or negative. Yani rahisi. 2x squared plus x minus 36 is equals to 0. Simple. Identify a. A is 2. Identify b. B is 1. Identify c. C is negative 36. Hata ikiletwa combo, you rearrange it so that you get the right values for a, b and c. After that, we kazi yako ni kureplace. Your work now is to replace. And replacing in the formula means that x is equals to negative b. This is the quadratic formula. Ufai hata kukram, iko nyuma ya log table. Yani we kitu inahitajika ufanye ni ujue kuitumia, matumizi yake. Una replace neg b. Now that will be neg 1 plus or minus. Unaweka hii b squared, unaweka bracket mzuri. Hapa ndani nilikuambia if you mess ni hivyo, max imeenda. So be very keen, unaweka brackets venye naweka, so that you don't get the wrong answers. Then I said malizana na juu kwanza. This is neg 1 plus or minus. What do you get? Ukichukua 1 squared minus 4 into 2 times negative 36. 289. Malizana na juu kwanza. This is where people get confused. So this is neg 1 plus or minus. Hiyo ni square root of 17. Alafu ukishapata hiyo, ndio unakuja hapa unapata over 2a. 2a ni 2 times a, ambayo ni 4. 2 times 2 is 4. So your x can either be neg 1 plus 17 over 4, or x can be neg 1 minus 17 over 4. What is x? Or neg 9 over 2. Yani hesabu rahisi, lakini where students fail is here. Hawaweki bracket. So they end up getting wrong answers. But if you do the way I've done, you'll always be getting free marks. These are called free marks. Another way through which we can solve a quadratic equation is by graphical methods. By graphical method. And because we don't have a graph, I'll simply tell you what is expected. That once you plot and draw your graph, once you plot and draw your graph, it is important to know that the solution for that particular graph is where the graph cuts the x-axis. So it is this point. So this will give you the first x, this will give you the second x. And this one here is the C, meaning it is the y-intercept. It is the what? The y-intercept. So basically, this is how a graph looks like. So for you to get the solution, you simply make your readings on the x-axis. Simply make your reading on the x-axis. So meaning, if I was told that this graph is y is equals to x squared minus 5x plus 6, then I'm told to get these points here. Maybe I'm now told to get point A, point B, point C. Point A, point B, point C. What I'm simply going to do, I'm simply going to solve this. And once I solve it, I'll be able to know this point, and this point. And this is how you go about it. You solve x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equals to 0. You can get the product. This one now you know. Sum, negative 5. So what are the numbers? You have 3 and you have 2. How do we arrange them? We put negatives on both sides, isn't it? Yes. Therefore, we're going to split the middle term into 2. We have x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 6 is equals to 0. We factor them. When we factor them, the common will be x this side, and the common will be 1 on the other side. 2 on the other side. You can see that hizi lazima zifanane. Why? Because hii ukimultiply na hii itakupea hii. Negative times negative is positive. Hizi zisipofanana kwa bracket yako, hell, you are going to hell. X minus 2, x minus 3 is equals to 0. So x is either 2 or x is 3. So hata kama unatumia common sense, unajua 2 iko mbele ama iko nyuma. So unaweza jua at this point ni 3. And the coordinate there is 3, 0, because at x-intercept y is equals to 0. And this point here now you will know it is 2, 0. Why? Because at x-intercept y is 0. And then C, how do you get C? You just say at y-intercept x is 0. So you replace everything here by 0, 0. So here will become 6. So it is 0, 6, because it is the y-intercept. So here x is 0, but y is 6. Yeah, so that is how we analyze graphs in order to get solutions of that particular graph. That is all about that. All right, on to our last segment for today, what we call perfect squares. Perfect squares. And what you only need to understand is that for perfect squares, b squared is equals to 4ac. This is the only thing you need to know. Wachana na maneno mingi. B squared, if you're told something is a perfect square, it must satisfy this equation. B squared is equals to 4ac. So hii ndio method. So cha muhimu ni understand. Na bado nitarudia. Ax squared plus bx plus c. What do they mean? A is the coefficients of the polynomial of second order, which is x squared, plus b is the coefficients or the number that comes before the x value, and c is the y-intercept. So, hizi ndio values una extract. If you're told something is a perfect square, then it must satisfy this condition. B squared is equals to 4ac. For example, you can be told to find b given that bx bx squared plus 12x plus 9. So this is minus 12x minus 9 is a perfect square. Surely, how do you miss these points? Na mimi nimesema perfect square must meet this condition. B squared is equals to 4ac. Wewe unachukua tu, unasema kwa hii nimepewa. Where is A? A ni B. Ndio hii. Alafu B ni nini? Negative 12. Alafu C ni nini? 9. Alafu una replace hapa. Unasema B squared. B ndio hii. Negative 12 squared. Wekanga bracket. Zoea hiyo kuweka bracket ili you don't mess up in exam. What is A? A tumepewa ni B by C times C, 9. So this is like 144 to be equals to this is it 36? Is it 36B? What is B? 4. Yani rahisi. Another example. Given that 9x, wacha niandike na red ndio muone mzuri. 9x squared plus 12x plus t is a perfect square. Find t. Simple. You just collect the data. Unasema A ni nini? Ni 9. B ni nini? Ni 12. C ni nini? Haujui, ni t. Alafu unasema for perfect squares, B squared is equals to 4ac. B ni nini? 12 squared is equals to 4 into A ni nini? Ni 9. C ni nini? Ni t. Sasa wewe una mati, hii ni 144 is equals to 36 t. T. Yani ni rahisi. But that is what the topic is all about. So I want to thank you so much. Keep sharing our videos. Keep supporting Starbase Media. Thank you, my assistant Castro, for burning the midnight oil to ensure that we have the program on air. We would like you to support us. Support us in any way you can, and also reach out to us from the numbers on the screen. The support line is also on the screen. So thank you so much. Until next time, bye-bye.